Hello and welcome to the Dailies. Global media spotlighted France's political shock as Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu resigned just a day after forming his government. Coverage also centered on Hamas's measured response to President Trump's Gaza plan, widely seen as a sign of flexibility. Trump praised the move and urged Israel to halt its offensive, catching Netanyahu off guard and forcing him to adjust. And in the US, headlines focused on the deepening budget deadlock and looming government shutdown. We'll start with the developing story of the political crisis in France as Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu resigned only hours after unveiling his new government. Le Monde's, like many other French press, highlighted Lecornu's frustration with partisan divisions inside President Emmanuel Macron's fragile coalition, calling his departure the shortest and most dramatic in modern French history. The report details how the Prime Minister denounced partisan appetites that made governing impossible, as he says, deepening the political turmoil Macron has struggled to contain. The piece also reflects the reactions from across France's political spectrum, with far-right and left-right leaders demanding new elections or even Macron's resignation. Le Monde frames Lecornu's resignation as both a symptom and also a catalyst of France's widening political instability. Global media continue to focus on the Middle East and on President Trump's praise of Hamas' acceptance of his peace plan. Axios published an exclusive interview with President Trump, revealing behind-the-scenes details of how the president personally pushed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to accept the emerging Gaza peace deal. Trump disclosed that he told Netanyahu directly, "Bibi, this is your chance for victory. You've got to be fine with it. With me," as Trump says, "you have no choice." The exclusive account also shows Trump taking full control of the ceasefire process, pressing Israel to hold strikes and move toward an immediate hostage release deal. His envoys, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, were dispatched to Egypt to finalize terms, while Trump enlisted Turkey's President Erdogan to pressure Hamas. The revelations underscore Trump's hands-on diplomacy and how he strong-armed Netanyahu into compliance to claim the Gaza deal as his personal triumph. Palestinian press covered Hamas's response, with many describing it as a masterclass in political strategy. Amira Nahal notes in Philistine Online that instead of an emotional rejection, Hamas issued a carefully measured statement that balanced firmness with diplomacy. The author highlights how the movement spoke to four audiences: Palestinians, Arabs, the global public, and also Western policymakers, while also avoiding provocations that Netanyahu hoped for. By framing its opposition around international law and national unity, Hamas appeared more politically mature and credible than ever. The piece also concludes that this calm yet calculated tone undermined Netanyahu's narrative, portraying Hamas not as an obstacle to peace, but as a rational actor defending legitimate Palestinian rights and sovereignty. Arab media also covered the latest developments widely. Ghassan Sherbil reflected in Al-Sharq Al-Awsat on the past 2 years since Hamas's Al-Aqsa flood attack and the devastating war that followed. The article portrays President Trump as the general of the White House, the only figure capable of forcing both Netanyahu and Hamas to accept an uncompromising peace plan involving a ceasefire, hostage exchange, and Gaza's disarmament. It also argues that Trump strong-armed both sides, warning Hamas of all hell if it refused, and compelling Netanyahu to yield despite domestic risks. The piece also traces the wider regional shift since 2023, Syria's realignment, Hezbollah's weakening, and Iran's decline, framing Trump's initiative as part of a dramatic Middle East transformation. Yet it warns that sustaining peace will be as difficult as imposing it. Mara Rudman, in her Haaretz article, explains how Prime Minister Netanyahu's failed strike in Doha turned into an unexpected boost for President Trump's Gaza peace plan. The attack angered Arab and Muslim nations, embarrassed Israel, and pushed regional leaders to unite behind Trump's proposal. The plan includes a ceasefire, hostage exchange, and a new technocratic Palestinian government supervised by a peace board led by Trump and Tony Blair. Rudman says both Netanyahu and Hamas are now under pressure. Hamas has lost support and Netanyahu faces internal rifts. The article concludes that Trump's plan, despite doubts, now has rare international momentum and could mark the closest step yet to ending the Gaza war. Israel Hayom explores President Donald Trump's pursuit of the Nobel Peace Prize amid renewed efforts to end the Gaza war. The report highlights Trump argues he deserves the award for ending 7 wars and brokering global peace deals, contrasting his record with Barack Obama's early win. Also, despite his claims, betting markets give him slim odds, only 4%, compared to leading contenders like Sudan's emergency organizations, 28%, Mediterranean rescue groups, 27%, and Greta Thunberg, 22%. The piece also highlights Trump's frustration with what he calls liberal bias in the Nobel Committee, while noting that nominations for 2025 are already closed. His peace push in Gaza may strengthen his case for next year's prize. The Guardian examines the fragile prospects of President Trump's 20-point Gaza peace plan, the closest Israel and Hamas have come to ending the war in 2 years. The report highlights Hamas's political acceptance, agreeing to release hostages and cede power, but refusing immediate disarmament, while Israel remains vague on troop withdrawal timelines. Negotiators from both sides, along with US and Arab mediators, are set to meet in Cairo to bridge these gaps. And the piece notes Trump's urgency to secure a breakthrough, even eyeing a Nobel Peace Prize, but cautions that deep mistrust and conflicting interpretations over key points like disarmament and also withdrawal could once again derail hopes for a lasting truce. The New York Times reports that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is portraying the emerging Gaza deal as his diplomatic success, but President Donald Trump is clearly the one in charge. In its analysis, the Times details how Trump strong-armed Netanyahu into accepting the plan, which includes freeing hostages, a ceasefire, and partial Israeli withdrawal. And analysts say Netanyahu, facing global isolation and also domestic pressure, had little choice but to comply. Trump publicly revealed details before Israel did, even ordering Netanyahu to apologize to Qatar over a failed strike. The piece argues the episode shows Israel's growing dependence on Washington and how Trump's unpredictable style leaves Netanyahu balancing between saving hostages, calming allies, and preserving his own political survival. And we'll end with the Washington Post, which contends that the U.S. Supreme Court is heading for a major confrontation with President Donald Trump as it begins its new term. After months of short emergency rulings favoring Trump, the justices will now deliver final decisions on his most controversial policies, including tariffs, immigration, and presidential powers. One key case will decide if Trump can fire a Federal Reserve governor, a move that could reshape America's economic independence. Others also involve ending birthright citizenship, deportation powers, and also limits on transgender rights. Legal experts call it a showdown that will test both Trump's authority and the court's credibility. With public trust in the court already low, its rulings could redefine the balance of power in Washington. That's it for today. Thanks for watching.